Welcome to the Mental Advantage Podcast. Whether you're an athlete trying to perform at your best when it counts the most, a coach or business leader trying to get more out of your team, or someone looking for more personal growth, this is the place for you. This podcast is your map to guide you to the right mindset, systems, and strategies you need to become the best version of yourself. And now, here's John Cullen and Brandon Allen.
Oh, we're back at it. It's interesting. I think we've kind of over the course of this, we're coming up on, I want to say that this next episode with Bhrett McCabe is going to be number 20, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think it's if it's not 20, it's like it's right there close to it. But it's just insane that it's gone that fast, because it feels like I don't know if you've done this, but I've gone back and listened to some other shows, and I do think that we're making, like we kept saying, we'll just try to get better every show. And I do think that we're making progress. I don't know if the all of the listeners would necessarily.
I would definitely say that it is a very selective few that would be able to probably piece together like the maturation trajectory, evolution, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, it's not going to be a communication study at any college anytime soon. The maturation of the Mental Advantage podcast. So it is one of those things that I think early on we just kept trying to. We would talk about, well, let's say less of the I thinks and less of the, like, we would always have like that little thing that was bothering us. Me more so than you. You're always like, just stay the course. Like, it's fine. It'll be okay or whatever. And I was like, you know what? I was listening to the show for the 5th time since last night. And so, but it's good.
It's real good. I've had, even today I had someone was like, man, I know you guys have, I've heard you talk about your podcast. I know this, I know that. He's like, and he said, I wasn't trying to not listen to it. He said, I just hadn't been able to get to it. And I finally did. He was like, I listened to like 3 of them in a row. And I was like, thank you. You are obviously wildly bored or have so much time on your hands that you don't know what to do with, but I appreciate it. He's like, no, I started listening, and then it just kind of, he's like, they just kind of rolled over, and he was like, I didn't stop. And I was like, that's great to hear. So,
yeah, I think it's one of those things that we've had some really great guests as we've talked about, and we'll talk about one here in a second. But I also think that it's a situation where the style, everything has gone through a little bit of a change, in the sense that we realized early on, and you're going to have this. I mean, when you're dealing with a podcast, everybody and their brother, it seems like there for a while was starting up a podcast. And then, I think when we decided, let's let that guest be the story, and that they're going to be the ones that are unpacking a lot of different things, and really got not away from the strategy and the systems approach, but definitely more of the application that has been a conscious effort on our part. But, one of the listeners, I think, that's been kind of dialed in from the get-go is our good friend, Chad Hefner, who, I've known Hef since high school, and I know you've known him through me, and he is, first of all, just one of the greatest people you ever meet, but he also, I always tell him, as a great example of that today plus today plus today equals your goal, just continuing to show up. He's got a landscape company, a hardscape company, basically, that does, I don't even know if I would want to pigeonhole it into landscape or hardscape, because if you guys get the chance and you're listening out there, go to search Hefscapes, HEFSCAPES on Instagram, or find it on Facebook. But some of the pictures that you see are just like literally right out of a resort kind of a thing. And that's these people's backyards now. And, Brandon, you and I were talking about this the other day, that here's somebody who started out with just, he would have been happy just doing somebody's like flower beds. Like it was like, okay, let me do that. And then it was like, oh, maybe I'll expand out and do a little bit more with the flower bed, and maybe I'll put some trees in. And then it was like, well, yeah, I could do some, stonework for you if you'd like. I can lay some, pavers down or whatever the case may be. And then it just is like somewhere along the line. And he's always had that artistic mind.
That's it, right? He's definitely got an artist eye.
Yes.
And it's a gift.
Yeah.
But that's one of the gifts that talking to guests and certainly athletes and all that. Everybody has this God-given gift that and that's the one thing that I really love about the podcast is that it's really just trying to get your head around what is it that you can give back, right?
Yep.
But the stuff that Hef does is amazing. I wish he was down here because I could use. Believe me, I could use them.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I tell people. So he does mostly in West Virginia, Pennsylvania area, but just really proud of him. Really proud of everything that he's been able to accomplish. He's partnered now with some company, 718 Designs, and build. And doing all kinds of great stuff. It's been cool. As you just said, it's cool to watch people. And that's what I think you and I have done over the years is gotten a big charge out of watching people exceed maybe their own expectations, or at least succeed in accomplishing the goals that they're wanting to accomplish. But you reminded me when you just said that of I would be misquoting somebody because I can't remember where I saw this, but they said the two greatest days of your life are the day you were born and the day you realize why. And I thought that was a really cool way of looking at that. It really is one of those things that you just have to commit to it, dial into the process, and then eventually you're going to get there. And understand it's not going to be perfect. Like there's going to be lots of different bumps along the road.
There's bumps, there's setbacks, there's wild success. That's the one thing that I think, in talking with several of the mental performance coaches and folks that we've had the opportunity to talk to is, there's a level of dealing with success as much as there is with, failure or setback.
Yeah.
And so it's how do you kind of keep that in perspective? How do you respond to that event? How do you, understand how to stay the course and trust that process and not get overwhelmed by the outcome, because the outcome could be something that really didn't follow your process, but provided some immediate gratification or success, but it isn't going to be successful long term. So, to that end, and then I think at the end of the day, John, one of the things that you just said that I think resonates, I know for me, is I just personally really like to, I view it almost as a coaching perspective, in that I just want to give you an opportunity to win a game, right? I'm just trying to give you an opportunity to win. And sometimes that can take all kinds of forms, right? Sometimes it's cheerleader, sometimes it's a kick in the ass. Sometimes it's how are you and how do you respond and how are you coachable and what can I do to help you succeed? Because at the end of the day, if you're that guy that is just worried about your success and all that you do, man, in my opinion, that's just not an existence that I would care to have.
Yeah. It's hard to, what's Mike Singletary said, you can't win with them. You can't play with them. You
Don't want them. Can't need them. Don't need them. Don't need them.
Yes. I love that. That's one of those things, those coaches talks that you hear that you're just like, wow, that's spot on.
Well, and if you've been there, like,
oh yeah,
it was just when that came out, that was just some raw, like, just
that's just being done. Yeah,
and I've had enough.
Yeah,
and I've tried it this way. I've tried it that way. It's not, but here's the thing too. And for those of y'all that don't know, go look it up. He's talking about a couple of players, and he just couldn't get to him. There was no way for him to effectively communicate. And I can tell you, I've had some rides home, where I've had those talks to myself. I mean, you don't have that talk with the kids in the car for sure. And I know that I've had people looking at me at a red light like, that dude's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is one of those
well,
things.
You just, you can only take so much. I mean, at some point you're just like, okay. And you can see it as a player, you can see it build in your coaches. And, as a coach, I told, a high school group I was coaching one time that the one of the most helpless feelings as a coach is when you finally come to that conclusion that your expectations for your team are greater than the ones they have for themselves. And I don't even know if that's just even, I mean, you could apply that to anything. As business leaders, we could apply it to, the folks that we work with. As just a co-worker of somebody else, you could apply it with your own, work team, whatever the case would be. I mean, we all have those moments or those people in our lives that when you finally realize that your expectations of them are higher than what they're currently having for themselves. And that's a really tough thing, because where do you go from there?
It is tough. And it's one of those things where I think you have to sit down and go, hey, as an empath and as a mentor, as a coach, as a whatever, look, so this is a perfect example. Yesterday we're at practice, 13U baseball. We are struggling. We're struggling to communicate. We're just struggling. And one of our challenges as a team is we don't know how to respond necessarily when things aren't going our way. Now, we are a very difficult team to beat when we're ahead. If we can get up 1 or 2 on you, we are going to probably be up 7 or 8 on you. It's just that young team momentum kind of a thing, right? And so we're at practice, and I'm trying to ask some questions as a coach, because we need feedback as coaches to say, I don't know how to help you if you aren't providing some feedback.
Right.
And so, I asked the guy, said, hey, why did you do that? Why are you, what is your thought process here? Tell me where we are with this. And he's like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know isn't an answer. Like, there's no wrong answer here, but you have to provide feedback. So anyway, to circle back to what you were talking about, I see so much, and I think, and again, whether it's a parent, a business leader, or a coach, or just a human being, I think you see things in certain people, especially when you've done it as long as you and I have. Like, athletes are pretty easily identifiable. Just good people in general are pretty easily identifiable. And it's one of those things where you're like, guys, I see so much potential, but you have to go out there and capture it, because potential is just that. It's
just means you haven't done it yet.
Right. It's an unrealized expectation. I mean, it just is what it is. And if you don't believe in that, I mean, that can be very disheartening as parent, teacher, coach, mentor, whatever. When you're trying to pour into somebody or a team or something and they don't see what they could be, it doesn't matter. It's without that perspective and understanding what you see, it can be rough.
But, one of the things you said, Brandon, and it's so important for coaches and parents and guys, everything we talk about, when we say coach, is so interchangeable with parent or business leader, whatever the case may be. But one of the things that you said there, or your approach anyhow, that was so key is just being able to try and understand. It's the whole Stephen Covey, seek first to understand, is when you're dealing with that resistance. So Bhrett McCabe, who is our guest this coming Friday, who we're really excited about. He's the host of the Secrets of Winning podcast. He's got, involved in everything, works with the University of Alabama athletic department. He's got the Catalyst School, which is, and I love this. We're going to talk to him about this. It's just a coach's training for coaches, better coaching education, better culture and connectiveness, and better results and all of that good stuff. And he's also got like an attacker golf training system. He's somebody who, like Mo Pickens, is also very active with the PGA Tour guys. But Bhrett on his, or Dr. McCabe, I don't know yet which we should call him, Bhrett or Dr. McCabe. We'll have to ask him. But he, on his Instagram this not too long ago, actually it was March 31st, said, and I liked this a lot and you made me think of it, which is why I pulled it up, is resistance. He talks about resistance from players. Coaches, you better get very good at handling it. And again, those of you listening, could be a kid, a child of yours, whatever the case would be. But players resist because 1, they don't understand. 2, they don't believe the information. 3, they don't trust you. 4, they do not trust themselves with the information. Or 5, they do not believe they can do it. And you got to figure out which one it is. It's, I just had this conversation with someone the other day as a business leader coaching a team. A lot of times when you have somebody who's not performing well, you're breaking that down. Is it a can-do issue or a want-to issue?
Sure.
Can they do it and they just don't want to,
right,
or can they not do it and now I have to train them up and upskill them?
Absolutely, and there is the big thing. It's not that they can't do it; it's that they can't do it yet because. As a coach, as a parent, as business leader, you just haven't had an opportunity to prep them, to groom them, to give them the tool set to be successful. And again, it just that's what I love so far about this podcast. I know this particular episode sounds like what do we love about the podcast, but it is.
What do we love about our own podcast?
Hey, what do you love about? Hey, I'm giving us a 5-star, but in all, in reality, it is one of those things that I think the podcast really provides some tools and some tool set for people to go out and be successful. And just like everything else, if you don't apply it, if you don't try it, if you don't go out, it doesn't matter. And then you and I are just having a good time and laughing.
Yeah, just having another one of our conversations that we would have, whether somebody was listening or not. But and again, it goes back to the reason it works. If I do say so myself with the show, is because it's coming from a genuine place of interest. Like we're just like the listeners. Like there are so many times when we're interviewing people, I'm just like so dialed into what they're saying. I'm forgetting that, hey, when they stop talking, I'm going to have to think of another question or a lot of times it just happens. Some of our best conversations on this show has been just when we're just literally like dialed into what they're saying and having a conversation. And sometimes that can go in a lot of different directions. And those have been the most rewarding because, again, it comes back to the guests that we have. But one thing I wanted, speaking of guests, and we'll kind of wrap up to this particular show with this segment, but we had talked about a while back how much fun it would be that, when we started this thing, we never really got into talking to each other and letting the audience know about what we're about, where we came from. We're always, one of the questions we always ask every one of the guests is, tell me about kind of what made you go down this road? What were some of your pivot points and that type of thing? So I thought it would be pretty cool to just take a few minutes here. We're not going to necessarily get the autobiography part of it. People will have to wait for the book, but it would be interesting to find out, what a little bit more for the listeners, a little bit more about you, and Lord forbid if they need to know or want to know a little bit more about me. But why don't we start with this, Brandon? Just tell people kind of maybe where, just like one of our guests would, where you grew up and kind of what that was like as far as sports you played and all that other good stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, I had some very young parents, and as
two of the best parents, by the way, just for the listeners, like Mike and Cindy Allen. Yeah. You don't get much better than that.
You don't. And I was very, very fortunate and blessed to be raised in a family, not just them, but a surrounding family of aunts and uncles and cousins that, kind of loved on and really learned the importance of family. But, kind of moved around early on between Alabama. Lived out in Kansas City for a while, and then kind of settled here outside of Georgia, and grew up in Alpharetta. So it was, very, very lucky to play organized sports in a very, very competitive area down in the perimeter area of Dunwoody, and was fortunate again to be on some very successful teams at an early age. Kind of tasted that. I was 11 or 12. We won the Pop Warner National Championship. And so, and it was I remember going through that process and thinking, wow, this is what success is kind of really like. Like, it took a lot of work. It took there was an imprint there, right? And so it was something that at that point in time, I really learned at a very young age, kind of about work ethic and responsibility. It was something that my parents really, really preached was you get as much freedom as you have responsibility. And so if you're not a knucklehead, we can trust you to go do some things. If you aren't taking care of the things that you're supposed to take care of, then we'll tighten it up a little bit. And so learned that at a young age, and was able and fortunate enough to get to high school and played a lot of different things. Played football, basketball, and baseball, and realized probably my junior year, still played basketball, but realized that was not where I was going to find the most success. And it was either going to be football or baseball, and was fortunate enough in both sports to, have some interest going at the next level. And again, ultimately decided that baseball was kind of where it was going to be for me. And really the interesting part is, you look back and go, man, if there was one more thing here or one more thing that way, or if they would have just maybe made that offer, things may have been different. But very blessed for the path that it took me on. Ran into you at the College of Charleston, and
that's it. Life changed
forever. I mean,
there's no turning back. More stories have wound up down that road. That dead end.
I was going to say, so really that at a very high level, that was kind of it. And then, came back after school and, was, fortunate enough to play a little bit after, college and
and now a parent, and like you have the business world, you've got coaching you're still doing.
Yeah, all that, right? And so very blessed, extremely busy, but busy doing the things that I'm called, like I feel like I'm called to do and enjoy doing. And so yeah, I love it. And I wouldn't trade anything for where I'm at now. It's just very fortunate. So yeah, I mean, that's at a high level, and we'll have another podcast to talk about some of those stories, but
those turning points.
Yeah. But that's it. That's it for me at a pretty high level. So, I mean, I certainly didn't grow up in a town called the City of Champions. I think
this is true. Very few have had the opportunity to grace those streets. Brandon, referencing my high school, Bridgeport High School, which I'm very proud alum, which has had much success. But, Brandon, you talked about it, is when you taste it, when you are part of teams that are successful, it becomes part of the culture. And I say all the time, I mean, there are certain high school programs, certain college programs, certain, businesses, whatever the case would be, when they have success, it just becomes an expectation. And now everybody realizes, in order to even participate here, you've got to be able to have a certain standard about it. You've got to be able to go at this in a different way.
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, I definitely was blessed in that regard, because I do think that makes a difference when you go on to play in other colleges or in colleges, I should say, because you've at least, what it takes to be successful, and you know what it takes to win. Just like you mentioned earlier, you got to learn how to lose and you got to learn how to win. And sometimes they're both equally difficult to learn, but lessons that need to be had for sure.
And also though too, and you look back and you go, well, I would have never identified back then that, this is a process.
Yeah.
That these outcomes were part of a process, not that the outcome was the outcome.
So we did so many things. So like you, it all starts with family for me. I grew up second youngest of 7 in St. Albans, West Virginia, and had, older brothers and sisters that played sports. And my mom and dad were very good about, like, never really said, you got to go do this, you got to do that. They just were like, trying to survive, really, because there's seven kids. So it's just basically like, just hang in there long enough to, I say all the time, I mean, just having had to do that with my son and daughter, run them around, and my stepsons. I can't even imagine what it was like doing that with 7, but they always said it really does take a village. It took a lot of help. But I believe that the difference, or what, as I look back on it and I say, growing up, what was the difference maker for me? I was a camp junkie. I loved to go to camps. I was always not going to be the most talented on the team from a natural skill standpoint, but I would be the most fundamental. I was going to make sure I knew how to do it. So if there was a camp in our community, I would go to it. And I think is why I became so active in camps as a coach, was because of the fact that, I knew what value I placed on them as a player.
The importance.
Absolutely.
You saw the importance.
And what a difference that makes is just, talk about being a difference maker. But something that, as I look back on this, and I've shared this with my kids a lot, is we were just, as I'm sure you were, I grew up in a community where it was wiffle ball leagues. It was, I mean, if you could find something to compete in, not flag football, touch football, which became tackle football, which became, the wiffle ball leagues in everybody's backyard. They had certain dimensions. And if you played it off the house, if you hit the house, it was a home run in this yard, but over at Bobby's yard, it might be an out, because his house is right there, short porch or whatever. So you were always learning the game. That was all that process without even calling it the process. But then also it was, we had a brick wall in front of our house in St. Albans that I would throw a tennis ball against every single day, literally every single day, and just catch it with a glove and play mental games in my mind. Like, I was the Reds and we were playing the Cardinals, whoever, but I would do the pitching. I would do the fielding, the wall was doing all the hitting. But it was fun. I didn't think of it as extra practice because to me, it's what I love to do. So why would you not do anything else,
Sure.
But it was just, so you were always involved in it. And the same thing with you, it was playing some sport all the time, basketball led into baseball led into football, and then on you went. And then as I grew up, and got involved in Babe Ruth and some of those things and all the all-star teams and stuff. We didn't have travel in the regards that they have travel now, right? There's a great line that one of my friends, Mike Bocock, who is a coach, here in the Valley. I say here in the Valley, I'm in Nashville now, but back in the Valley, I'll say that, in Virginia, who used to say, yeah, we had travel sports when I was a kid. It was called, I got on my bike and traveled down the local field. He was like, that's how you did it, right?
And I can't even, I look back and think of how many times that I left what I would call unorganized games.
Yeah.
The wiffle ball, the tag football, like you said, each neighborhood had their own little spin. But I would leave that to go to organized sports.
Right.
And it was just the activity and growing up. And again, though, I think you learn at a very young age, like how to cope with, maybe I don't want to leave this unorganized thing to go do this organized thing, right. But I'm committed to it. There's just, and it's so much to unpack that we don't have time for.
But we never called it. You never called it. Who was it that was, might have been Bob Tewksbury was talking about this, but we didn't call it. It was somebody we had.
It was Doc Rivers.
Doc Rivers said, I don't call it practice. Don't go
practice.
I was just going to play basketball. Yeah. Right. I resonated with that so much. And I know you did as well, because it's so true. It's like, what the rest of that sentence that Brandon was probably going to say before I cut him off was, after that organized sport, you'd be back playing the unorganized, like you'd be back playing the Sandlot game, because it was just playing. That's right. As long as the street lights weren't on.
Once the street lights were on, everybody knew it was dinner time.
That's it.
So,
that's it.
It was what it was. But yeah, and in the summer. And again, like I was very, very fortunate in that my parents trusted me, and at a pretty young age. I think the statute of limitations has run out for defects, but at a pretty young age, they'd let me stay at home during the summer and play with friends, and it was fun.
Yeah, same here. I don't know if they were letting me stay at home or just forgot that I was home with 7 kids.
At some point with 7, and you're this. Why would
it's like Home Alone every day?
Somebody's here. Honey, there's never not going to be someone around to watch John. You're fine.
But it's funny because that our neighborhoods were that way. Now we're like turning down this nostalgic lane, but our neighborhoods were that way, where I'm sure, like mine, when you would go out and play in the streets or whatever, if you, said something you shouldn't say, or you did something you shouldn't do, somebody was going to address it. They weren't waiting for to call your mom and dad, and there were no Karens around. They were just coming to get you. Yeah.
Because not only were you going to get it. So I've got a buddy, and his mom used to, I look back and she was, Angela Nunziata, and his dad too. So my buddy Nick, his parents, from New York, and would say stuff, but they would hit you on the back of the head as quick as you were theirs, but because you did something that was wrong, and you would just pray that it just stopped there. Like, hey, you hit me on the back of the head. I've learned my lesson. Please don't call mom and dad. Right? We're good.
Yeah.
So,
No, it was great. I'll tell you a funny story about punishment from my childhood. Is so at our school, when I was still in junior high school, they still did spanking. So you still got the paddle. And so I had went through a pretty good stretch of paddlings, as they say. I think I probably still hold the record at Hayes Junior High School for a number of times. The vice principal called me in to do that, and they would fill out a form and you had to take it home and get it signed. Well, I never wanted to deal with what was going to happen at home if they found out I was in trouble at school.
Right.
Like any, kid does at around 13, 14 years old, I'd figured out, well, I'll just sign my mom's signature. No big deal. No harm, no foul. Right. Until the day that it's like going for number 10 or 11. I think I'm like on the cusp of the set of steak knives with the paddlings at this school. And I decide, you know what, this is bullshit. Like, there's no reason I should be in trouble for this or whatever. I'm going to tell my mom about it because I know she won't put up with it. So I go home and I tell my mom, like, look, this is why they're wanting to give me a spanking at school. And she was like, what they're doing? They're not going to give you a spanking at school. We'll deal with that at home or whatever. And I'm like, you're right, Mom. That's good. So, we just won't sign this or whatever. Yeah. And she says, no, tomorrow morning, you and me, we're going in that office. We're going to tell them about it. And I'm like, well, you know what? I just think maybe just me telling them you're not happy or a note would be sufficient.
No, they're going to know. They're going to know you're right down with this.
So here we go into the school, and I know what's coming. And we sit down there in the vice principal's office, and she proceeds to tell them, look, we take care of any discipline in our family at our house, and we'll deal with this. You don't need to be doing this at school. And I'm not signing that. And the vice principal sits there and looks at her, and he looks at me and he says, do you want to mention anything to your mom? And I was like, no, I'm good. You heard what she said.
You heard what she said. You heard the game plan.
Right. We're just going to leave right now. Nothing else needs to be said here.
We're gone. Excuse you. Thank you very much.
He says, well, Mrs. Cullen, he goes, here's about 10 slips that you've signed this year to approve the spankings. That was not a good day for me, because she realized pretty quickly that she had not signed any of those. And so then I not only got the one I was supposed to, all of a sudden she came around to what the vice principal was thinking. Right. So, yeah.
Hey, can I borrow your paddle, vice principal?
Right. Yeah. So we got one that day at school, and then at home as well. But, one of the things, Brandon, and the reason not to just tell paddling stories or this trip down memory lane, but one of the reasons we wanted to talk about some of that is both of us at an early age, like Brandon said, you notice the work ethic, you notice the commitment to the process, you notice that the other thing you notice is the fact that the mental aspect is the difference maker. Like, at some point, as we start getting more and more at a higher level, playing sports at a higher level, whether that starts to get into high school, it starts to get into college, that you start to realize, the most talented don't always come out on top. Like, there's something else there. There's some X factor that maybe they didn't talk about at that baseball camp I went to in the fourth grade or whatever. And now we start to piece that together that okay, there's something that is the key here. And if I can tap into that, we'll really be able to set us apart.
For sure. Because as we've learned, as it not only does it make a difference on the field and in the performance, it makes such a huge difference off the field, right?
Yeah.
If your mind is right, if you're willing to put in that work, if you're willing to go work out with a grateful heart and a grateful mind thankful for the opportunity. And it doesn't have to be every day. I mean, we've talked about it before. It doesn't mean that you're happy to be there every day.
Right.
If you're going to be there and be present and put forth the effort, because whether you want to be there or not be there, you're going to be there. And so you might as well at least allow yourself the opportunity to get better that day. And so that to me was always, and there's other ways too, right? With just kind of the Jockos and the
right.
David Gogginses that, tapping into that kind of primal, being able to live in that dark place and really, really push.
Yeah.
And that's different. And I love it, but it's different.
Right.
And it's not for everybody. And I get that. But there needs to be some of that, I think, in every competitive person, is the allowing yourself to be a monster, right?
Yeah.
And it's
and go to that place and understand that the way you play, it's you play with arrogance and practice humility, right? It's you play like you're the best and practice like you're the worst. But it's that daily discipline that Brian Kite, our friend of the show, Brian Kite, talks about, is just daily discipline and do the work. And like you said, it's showing up, and it might not always feel great. I saw a great thing in the Daily Stoic about, I don't know, a week or so ago that was, it's not that we have a short time to live, but we waste a lot of it.
Sure you do. Sure you do.
I mean, it's that's it. We waste a lot of it. We find excuses. We come up with reasons why we can't. We have all of these things, but then we all turn around and say, "Oh, I wish I could have done. I wish I had just done this. I wish I had done that." It's that someday I'll, of like, someday I'll do this, someday I'll do that, and it's really tough to watch people. It kind of is. We've now kind of almost come full circle with how we started the show about the expectations, but. It's amazing how many people will just not do it, but they are the ones who are limiting themselves.
Well, we've talked about it before, and again, not to unpack it here at the end of the show, but it's the last play of the game mentality. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, that guy lost us the game because of this, or she didn't do this, and that's what cost us. No, it's not. Mm-hmm. No, it's not, because we can go watch the film, and I can go through with a very critical eye and say, these 12 to 20 plays, these are what cost us the game. You just happen to remember this because it had such a huge impact, and it was at the end of the runway, right?
Right.
That's what you remember. You don't remember the fact that, hey, if you would have caught that ball, we would have maybe still had the starting pitcher in. It's good stuff like that.
Yeah. So. No, you're spot on. In the fact that makes me think about is the idea that you have people who will say things like, "Oh, well, you apply that to life, right? It's like, I didn't become a lawyer because I didn't get accepted into law school, or I didn't do this because I didn't do that." And it's like, the reason you didn't become a lawyer is you didn't study the same way back in junior high and high school that lawyers study.
You know what I mean? You didn't have the work ethic.
It had nothing to do with, let's be real about that.
Let's be honest.
Yeah. So I think it's that's the closing thing for the listeners today, is to be honest with yourself. I mean, Amen. Because if you can be honest with yourself,
you can't, who can?
That's right.
Like, if you can't be honest with yourself, you can't be honest with anybody. And really, that's
I mean, don't expect other people to treat you better than you treat yourself. I mean, Amen. So I think it's one of those things. So, all right, brother. Well, listen, another great conversation. We'll continue to ask people to send in those questions, comments, even to podcast@mentaladvantage.net. If you have any requests, whether that just be something you want us to unpack a little bit more on the show, maybe it's something that one of our guests has talked about in the past, and then just get ready to have a pad and pencil ready this Friday, because I'm telling you right now, Bhrett McCabe, Dr. Bhrett McCabe is going to absolutely blow your minds, because he's got such great stuff on all kinds of different levels. I mean, we just talked about the golf and the college sports and all that, but he's also very active with corporations as well. So thanks, and we'll talk to you on Friday.
Want to provide feedback or stay up to date with the show? Visit our Instagram page at Mental Advantage Podcast, or you can send us an email at podcast@mentaladvantage.net. To have John Cullen work with you or your team, please write to him at john.cullen@mentaladvantage.net. Thanks for listening to today's episode.